How's it going, guys? So today I wanted to talk about 5 things or 5 topics I wanted to see brought up and answered within the Call of Duty Zombies comics. Now, I've left out some of the more obvious stuff like the Chronorium and personal backstories for some of them like Broken Arrow and the Flesh and all that. So I've just tried bringing in stuff that may not be answered, but I would hope would be talked about. So number 1 is the Kino chalk, where it says Samantha, Amelia, Abigail. This is just one of those random chalks, and we all thought, okay, these are Samantha's friends, you know, they played in the theatre or whatever. And then, you know, we didn't think anything of it until Black Ops 2, when we finished the campaign, we got the credits, and we seen that Misty, her full name is Abigail Misty Brighton. So Misty is just a nickname, but her real name is Abigail. And so it's just one of those things like, why would you give a name to a character that's the same as this random piece of chalk? And so people were trying to draw up connections, and we didn't get any answered. But with the comic dealing with everyone's backstory, you know, we're going to get Russman and Broken Arrow next. We'll get Marlton and Nuketown probably, Samuel and the Flesh. And for Misty, we don't really have a clear-cut backstory for her that we know of yet, just that she was on a farm. But I think it'd be a really neat way to tie her and the others more into the story if they make her the Abigail that was seen on the Kino chalk. I think that'd be a really nice tie-in. I don't know how that would work at all because, you know, different generations pretty much. You know, you got one in the 40s and then this is presumably like near present day or whatever for transit and that. But this story's already like fucked up anyway with all the time shit going on. So I think they could work it in nicely. Number 2 is Romero's mysterious assistant. This is the woman heard in Revelations in the Shangri-La radios. We know that she was Romero's assistant, and she pretty much confirms that the Call of the Dead crew either died or went missing. And then somehow, you know, through studying Romero's notes, she ends up at Shangri-La, and she ends up in the Eclipse with Brock and Gary. And so she was the one who set the bear trap that we heard in the original Shangri-La radios. But those radios raised more questions than anything. They pretty much introduced this new character we've never heard of before, and inserted her into an integral part of the story, which was the eclipse that Brock and Gary are a part of. And so that most likely means that she is there while we're playing Shangri-La, while we're doing the Easter egg. She would have to be affected by all these eclipses and all that. Except she knows that she's in a time loop. Brock and Gary don't, but she knows that she's stuck in a time loop, and that makes her interesting. And so the comic would give us a nice way of talking about her, explaining why she's important and who she is. She doesn't have a name. A lot of people thought it was Sarah Michelle Gellar, but we now know that that is not it. She's just a very curious woman that I want to know more about. Number 3, I've talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but Group 601. I think that having them talked about or explained in the comic would just be a nice closure, a nice reference. They don't ever have to have Group 601 in the actual video game storyline, but they could have it in the comics, just, you know, have a reference or something. Some people were suggesting they might have something to do with Broken Arrow. That could be it. But yeah, just honestly a throwaway line, because they keep putting these references in, and I did say this in the video, but at first I did think, you know, hey, this is just a mistake, but they keep doing it. They purposely changed the Group 935 logo, but they kept the 601 number in it, so it's not a mistake at this point. So yeah, just knowing more about them would be great. So number 4, it's a pretty highly debated one. It's the Transit Moon timeline, when they take place. We know Call of the Dead and presumably Shangri-La take place in 2011. Well, Moon itself, it's really hard to tell. Does it take place in the 60s, like did they time travel back to the 60s? Or is it still 2011? Is it still present day there? Then you've got Transit, it's supposedly many decades or years after Moon. It's been ages pretty much, and we can tell that from the quotes from the Transit crew. But then you've got Nuketown Zombies, which takes place at the same time of Moon, but you've got Marlton in the bunker, and you can also hear the transit bus horn. And so that really kind of confuses and messes things up. It brings into like, what age is Marlton? What years do these take place in? And it's just a confusing mess that I'd love to just see explained once and for all. I hate to retconning, but I think there's no way it can physically make sense when all the pieces are out on the table. Like, I just don't think you can put together a plausible thing. Maybe they could, I don't know, but I'm just gonna say I'd be fine if they like changed something around in the comic to suit whatever year it was. And so for number 5, and this is related to the last one, I want to know what happened to the original characters after Moon. All we know is that Samantha somehow ended up in Agartha. She's in Richtofen's body still, but that's all we know. Richtofen doesn't mention them at all. Weasel mentions Nikolai, but we don't know if he's referring to the original or if he's referring to the Origins version. And then of course we've got original Richtofen in the comic, you know, his body going around in his Nazi uniform. And we don't know what's going on with him. He seems like a smart zombie, he knows what he's doing. But is Samantha in there? Did she leave that body? Is Richtofen back in that body, you know, after Maxie's buried ending? Which we still don't know which side is canon, by the way. But it's not just him also. What happened to Dempsey, Nikolai and Takio? Did they die on the moon? Did something happen? I want to know what happened to them, and I think a lot of people wanted to know what happened to them with Black Ops 2, but instead they went with the Origins characters, the younger versions of themselves, and it just seems like they won't answer it. But I think the comic would be a nice way to tie that loose end up, to put people's minds to rest, like, hey, this is what happened to these characters. But yeah, there's a couple more topics I think could be talked about, but those are the 5 that are priority for me. I think if even just one of those got talked about or answered, I'd be so happy. It's just one of those things that I've always kind of wondered about, but yeah, those 5, give us a bone guys, because I don't know if you're going to update Revelations or not. You said it was going to take 18 months, but if not, we have to wait like 2 more years for the next Treyarch game, and this comic's a relief. So come on, answer some of these points, some of these questions. Anyway, I'm gonna go guys. What's the one thing that you want answered in the comic? I'll catch you guys later. Cheers.